Cultivate our motivation. And when you look out at the evening sky, and you can see all the stars that we know are light years away, and that what we're seeing when we see them is the past. We're seeing what happened many, many, many years ago, but we're only learning of it now. And in around all those different suns and planets and so on, very good chance that there's various forms of life, not necessarily the ones that depend on water to live, but other living beings from different realms whose karma creates the kind of bodies that can live in those kind of environments. And all those sentient beings are involved in their own troubles and their own problems right now, all wanting to be happy, not wanting to suffer. And in all those various universes and solar systems, who knows if the Buddha Dharma even exists there? Because a Buddha appearing and living in those places depends on the karma of those sentient beings. So do they even have any opportunity to come in contact with the Buddha's liberating teachings? Or are they just living on automatic, following the afflictions, creating more and more karma, just like many sentient beings on planet Earth? And sometimes just like us when we're living on automatic. Creating the causes for one rebirth after another, with no end in sight, because no possibility of encountering the teachings, let alone hearing them, practicing them, realizing them, and so on. So while we have this precious human life that, compared to beginningless and endless time, is less than even a finger snap in endurance, let's take advantage of it and make our lives meaningful by generating bodhicitta and developing an understanding of emptiness. Okay, so last week we talked about the link of consciousness, the third link, and we talked about it in terms of the Sanskrit tradition. And here, whenever we have a name of something, like consciousness, okay? Consciousness can mean a whole bunch of different things in very different situations. So when we say third link consciousness, it's referring to a specific moment of consciousness or a specific type of consciousness. So don't get confused by thinking that each term refers to all the instances that go by that term. Yeah. Yeah. So in the Sanskrit tradition, consciousness refers to both the causal consciousness, the consciousness that the karmic seed is placed on, after it's created, and it also refers to the resultant consciousness that ripens, that is the first moment of the next life, after that karma has ripened and propelled us into another life. Okay, so those two moments of consciousness that this link refers to are separated by some time, okay? And that's just the way they defined it, yeah? Of course, they say there's a continuum between the causal consciousness and the resultant consciousness, but the way consciousness is defined in terms of the third link consciousness, it's two specific moments. The moment that the karma is placed on, after it's created, and the first moment of the next life when that karma has ripened and propelled us into the next life. Okay. Now, that was according to the Sanskrit tradition. Now we're going to go according to the Pali tradition, where it is a little bit different. Okay. Oh, different. Why is it different? Why don't they say the same thing? Did the Buddha's teaching start out one way and then somebody changed it and made it another way? Or did Buddha teach different things at different times? Can you merge the two explanations together? What's the history, how they develop? Okay, so all those questions, I have them too. And I don't know the answer. Okay? So we are all wandering around in the darkness of ignorance. Yeah. I've studied the 12 links several times, and I cannot say that I understand everything about them, let alone the difference between the Sanskrit tradition and the Pali tradition, how they describe these. Okay. It would be a great theme for a PhD thesis to develop research the history of how, these two systems, first explained the 12 links and then how it developed over time and so on and so forth. And that's what I've really encountered in working on this series of books for His Holiness, is there's a whole lot of themes for PhD theses here. Okay. I have no desire for a PhD degree. Okay. But for people who do, I can give you a lot of topics. Okay. So let's look at the consciousness according to the Pali tradition. Okay. So also here, you have in each tradition, you have the sutra explanation of the link and the commentary explanation of the link. And in the bit that I studied about the Pali tradition, people like Bhikkhu Bodhi and Bhikkhu Analayo make a big difference. They're always saying, according to the sutra, it says this. According to the commentary, it says this, because it's not always exactly the same. As we can see between the commentators, in our own tradition, the way they lay out different things, there's big differences. Okay. And it would be very interesting, this is another PhD thesis topic, to research some of these ideas from in the sutras and in the tantras, and how they appear there in the, the canonical texts that came directly from the Buddha, and then how the commentaries explain these things. And, is there some difference? Because the Tibetans rely much more on the commentaries than they do on the sutras directly. Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot to learn and a lot to figure out. Okay, so consciousness according to the Pali tradition. So according to the sutra explanation, third link consciousness refers specifically to the consciousness that initiates the new life, the rebirth linking consciousness that follows the death consciousness and connects the mind stream from the previous life to the new life. So when you look at the Pali Abhidharma, they divide the consciousness into all these different ones, and how many moments there are of each one in each continuum is totally mind-blowing, okay? So, it refers to the consciousness that initiates the new life, the rebirth linking consciousness, okay? So that's the consciousness that links from the death consciousness, which is another consciousness that's from the previous life. This is the one that links the death consciousness to the consciousness in the next life, which it's not exactly name and form, because they define name, have their own explanation for name and form, as does the Sanskrit tradition, but it links the two, okay? So, I sit there and wonder, well, why don't they have a consciousness that the karmic seed is placed on? Yeah? Why don't they specifically designate that? I have no idea. Yeah? Unless it's just something that's so taken for granted that it's not mentioned. Okay, so anyway, the third link consciousness is illusory, like an echo, a light, a seal impression, or a shadow. It does not come here from the previous life, yet it arises due to the causes in previous lives. Now we go, wait a minute. There's a consciousness continuum. Didn't it come here from a previous life? Are you saying that consciousness ends and another consciousness begins without any causes? No, they're not saying that. Okay. Because it says it arises due to the causes in the previous lives. But what they're accentuating is, and I think this is true in the Sanskrit tradition, is, when we're born, we have the 5 aggregates of a particular realm. Okay, so right now we have the 5 aggregates of the human realm. When we die, the 5 human aggregates cease. And then if you're born, let's say, as a deva, then you are born with the 5 aggregates of a deva. Okay, so the aggregates of a human being and the aggregates of a deva are different. Yeah? Because they're the product of different karmas. But, the aggregates of the deva arise from, they're connected in some way to the present aggregates as a human being. Okay. So the Sanskrit tradition talks about, emphasizes just the continuum that goes from one life to the next. But it's also true, what I just explained, there's 2 different sets aggregates. Yeah, but those aggregates are related to each other. At least the mental ones are. The bodies in the two lifetimes are made out of different substances. Yeah, the Deva body is not a continuity of the human body. Yeah, continuity of the human body is ashes and the worm's lunch and all these kinds of things. Okay. So that new consciousness that arises, it's illusory, like an echo, a light, a seal impression, or a shadow. Okay, so it's emphasizing that, we tend to think of consciousness, there it is. And especially in the Sanskrit, the consciousness goes from one lifetime to the other. And we picture it there, one consciousness, inherently existent. It's a river, but there's something permanent and truly existent in that river that goes along. Okay. And just in our mind, by saying continuum, our mind tends to make it very solid, whereby saying it in this way, a shadow, a light, an echo, we get more of the idea of the consciousness is not something fixed. It's changeable. You can't pin it down. I remember when the first book, it must have been Buddhism for Beginners. And I asked one Theravada monk that I knew to write an endorsement for it. And he read the book and he wrote to me and he said, your explanations of the continuity of the consciousness is not what the Buddha taught. It sounds like a soul. It sounds like you're talking about a soul that goes from one life to the next. And it's not that, he said. Yeah? And I found that very interesting because I was explaining it just like our tradition explains it. Yeah? But it does somehow can give the impression that you're talking about something that doesn't change so much. That's one thing that goes from one life to the next, kind of like a soul. Now, of course, the Sanskrit tradition doesn't mean that. But, when you talk about continuum, it can sound like that to some people. Yeah? And I wrote back to him and I tried to explain kind of the idea. But it's very interesting in the Pali tradition. I think it was in a previous volume. We went through it already, unless it's coming up. But Geshe Dadal translated one sutra. I think it must have been a Sanskrit sutra because he translated it from Tibetan, where it was talking about going from one life to the next. And it's like, one of the analogies that I think is quite good is it's like a seal or a stamp. Yeah. When you stamp something, yeah, there's nothing that goes from the stamp to the piece of paper. Yeah? Or if you're stamping the clay, you could say, well, the ink goes. Well, take the example of some kind of seal in clay. You stamp it. There's nothing from the seal that goes to the clay. But the impression exists in the clay. And so they use that to describe how karmic seeds are carried from one life to the next. Yeah. So they really avoid this thing of making it sound very solid. Like there's a seed. No, it's like, there's a seal that makes an impression. But there's nothing that you can point to that goes, which I find very good. And, it loosens things up for me when I think of things like that, in that way. The consciousness of the next life is not the same as the previous life's consciousness. Yeah, because one is a human being in the example, the other one is a deva. It's not the same, nor is it totally unrelated. So they're not two different consciousnesses that have no relationship between, the two. If they were identical consciousnesses, one would not cause the other. If they were totally unrelated, there would not be a continuum. So if there were one consciousness, then one couldn't be the cause of the other. Now, of course, the Sanskrit tradition explains that as one moment of consciousness produces the next moment of consciousness, okay? But if you just sometimes talk consciousness and you say it's the same consciousness, then it does sound like a soul. And if that's the case, one cannot produce the other. On the other hand, if they were totally distinct, if we thought the human, consciousness is over here and the deva consciousness is here and they have no relationship, then they couldn't be a continuum and you couldn't talk about the continuity of the karma going from one life to the next. This refutation, what does it sound like? What's the refutation sound like? If it's identical, you have this consequence. If it's unrelated, you have this consequence. Where else do you find that? Yeah, when we do the fourfold investigation of, what is the I? Yeah. So it's interesting, isn't it? There it is, that whole thing. If two things are identical, they can't be causes. If two things are totally separate, they can't be related. Exactly like in the Sanskrit tradition. Okay? So you find, these little things that the traditions share that, nobody kind of sits there and points out and goes, hey, look at that, but you're reading it, it's like, oh boy, yeah, who thought of that first? Well, maybe, it was all coming from the Buddha and it was drawn out differently in different scriptures. Okay, so in the new life, consciousness simultaneously gives rise to the mental aspect of existence, which is called name. Okay, and animates the new physical form. Okay, so I don't know, simultaneous, it makes it sound like the two are existing together. And actually, we will, as we continue on, it does say that, we'll get to that, but it talks about different kind of causes. And the consciousness and name and form can exist simultaneously, according to that system. If you've studied the Sautantrika, they talk about different kind of causes, and it's what they're describing in the Pali is that whole thing that you find in Sautantrika. You remember studying that? Like they talk about simultaneous causes? Yeah, the Vaibhasika. Yeah. So, there's some similarities between Vaibhasika, Sautantrika, and the Pali tradition, but there's also a lot of differences. So the Tibetans tend to say, oh, the Pali tradition, that's just another kind of Vaibhasika or Sautantrika, and that's not correct. Okay. So in scientific terms, for a human rebirth, consciousness links with the fertilized ovum, making it become the body of a living being. Name consists of the 5 omnipresent mental factors: feeling, discrimination, intention, contact, and attention. Okay. Now we go, wait a minute, what? In the Sanskrit tradition, name refers to the consciousness in the next life. Okay, well, there's different, but there's overlaps and there's differences here. Okay, so, and it really emphasizes too that for a human rebirth, the consciousness links with the fertilized ovum, making it the body of a living being. So you may have a fertilized ovum, but that is not a sentient being. It's the presence of consciousness that makes a sentient being there, not just the conjoined sperm and egg. Okay? So name consists of the 5 omnipresent mental factors: feeling, discrimination, intention, contact, and attention. Which are all found, feeling and discrimination are their own aggregates, the second and third of the 5 aggregates, and intention, contact, and attention belong in the 4th aggregate. Got it? Okay. So in addition to this developmental process, consciousness conditions name and form whenever we cognize an object. Okay, so what we will find in the 12 links, and this refers to the Sanskrit tradition too, is when they describe each link, they can describe it in very, very different situations that make it very confusing when we're trying to learn them. Okay, so for example, when we talk about the development of a human being, we have consciousness and it produces name and form, and then the body develops and you get the 6 sources and so on. Okay, so you get this developmental thing, but kind of like biological development of how the body grows and the mind increases. The mental functions increase with that. And you also have the explanation of how consciousness arises when we cognize objects. Okay? And there it's talking about the 6 consciousnesses. Yeah. So what are the 6? Visual, auditory, olfactory, gustatory, tactile, mental. Okay. Okay. So there's the developmental perspective, and then there's the cognitive perspective of how you talk about consciousness and name and form and the 6 sources and contact and everything else. Okay. So the 5 factors of name depend on consciousness and cannot occur without it. So that makes sense. You can't have feeling, discrimination, intention, attention, and contact without having, the primary consciousnesses. Yeah. Even in deep sleep, fainting, coma, or meditative absorption, consciousness is present, although it is a subtle type of consciousness that is not aware of the external world. What is that? Yeah. As we go on, you'll find the Pali tradition talks about the bhavanka, which is this subtle consciousness that every time there's not a manifest consciousness, it arises and it keeps the continuity of consciousness going. But it's subtle and we're not aware of it. And it manifests in fainting, coma, Well, here in meditative absorption, deep sleep. Yeah. Does it sound like something else you've heard about? Not exactly the same, but kind of. What's that? Yeah, the fundamental clear light mind. Yeah, it sounds a little bit like, not totally, but what an interesting idea that is. Where did that come from? The Pali Abhidharma explains that consciousness and name and form are co-nascent, meaning that they arise simultaneously, like fire and its heat. In addition, consciousness and name and form are mutual conditions in that each conditions and supports the other, like two sticks leaning on each other to stand upright. Okay, when we started learning about different kinds of different kinds of causes, and this is like the Sarvastivada take on it. So it is Mula Sarvastivada also. And they talk about these co-nascent causes, and usually, causes. The cause has to cease for the result to arise. And here they're talking co-nascent, which means they arise simultaneously. Okay, like fire and its heat. Okay, so when you talk about one moment of fire, the heat that is with that one moment of fire is simultaneous with it. Yeah. That fire can also act as a cause for the heat in the next moment of the fire. Yeah. So it could be talking, it says co-nascent, but, if you dig deeper, it may be talking about different moments of fire, different moments of heat. Yeah. Or maybe they just mean, in terms of fire and heat, they have, at one point, they do have to arise together because the nature of fire is hot and burning. So if you don't have heat, you're not going to have fire. Yeah, heat is a quality of fire, so that moment of heat has to be simultaneous with the fire. Yeah, the next moment of fire is going to have its own heat. Yeah. Does one moment of fire produce the heat of the next moment? Physicists, what do you say? We have two of them.
What do you mean by heat? Because the physics definition of heat would be different. So what do you mean by heat?
Oh, what are the different definitions of heat?
Well, when we talk about heat within a physics context, it's the transfer of thermal energy, and I don't think that's what's meant here, and so I can't answer your question.
Okay, well, it just means hot. Yeah? Yeah. The transfer of thermal energy. So heat is movement. It involves movement. Something's transferring?
Sure. On a microscopic scale, it's a different way of, it's not our normal everyday definition of heat, but so that's where it's tricky, in that thermal properties within physics, there are very specific definitions. And so even hot isn't a word we would really use in physics. It's hot compared to something.
Yeah. Can physics talk just about, as normal people talk about heat? Can it talk about heat, or do physicists ever feel hot?
hot compared to normal? Huh? But that's a perception, right? That's not then how we talk about like thermal energy. That would be different.
What's thermal energy? Yeah, okay, so this is actually a good example that when you use one word, you can be talking about totally different things in totally different contexts, in totally different frameworks. And you have to have the framework and the context to understand what in the world's going on. Yeah, and so that's, I think, we can use here too, when we can't pinpoint everything in the way that we would like to. Yeah, because, hot is an attribute of fire. Everybody knows that, except maybe the physicists. I thought they went to college and were smart. They don't know what hot means. Okay. Yeah, no, it's a good example. Yeah. Okay. Did you explain the notion of thermal energy to the nuns when you taught them? Did they understand? Or did they ask you also what hot meant?
It was a wonderful example because it was co-taught. So myself and the other physicist, we weren't always using exactly the same terminology. The nuns pointed that out. And were asking us for very consistent, coherent, specific definitions for all of these terms. And for us, that's in the equations, I would say. We don't necessarily use words to describe these, but I can say, well, this is how it relates to these other things in a mathematical way. And the definition is perhaps in that relationship. So for me, it was very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, meaning in the mathematical relationship explaining the math explaining the relationship of different things. Yeah, I mean, you don't find that in the sutras. But, why not? Why not? It's a way of communicating, so, and it's a way of explaining things. Okay. Okay. So, meaning, connascent, meaning that they rise simultaneously, like fire and its heat, in certain contexts. Or maybe do you say fire and it's cold? Well, no, you don't say that because cold is not a separate thing. It's just a lack of heat. So, yeah, cold is not a thing. That's interesting, and that's science, isn't it? Yeah. It's just a lack of heat. In addition, consciousness and name and form are mutual conditions in that each conditions and supports each other, like two sticks leaning on each other to stand upright. Okay, now usually when we hear mutual conditions, again in Buddhism, your alarm goes off. Wait a minute, the cause creates the effect, but the effect doesn't create the cause, so how can you say that they're mutual conditions? Yeah, well, the one way you would explain it is, one moment of this produces moment one of this produces moment one of this, but those two don't exist at the same time because the result always comes after the cause. But that cause can then create moment two of this one, which then creates moment two of this one, but the two moment twos don't exist at the same time. Okay, so you can have something like that. But here, just, when you hear mutual conditions, it sounds like, that they, just at the same time are conditioning each other. Yeah. So I don't know. You'd have to really dig into the Sarvastivada Abhidharma and see what do they actually mean by mutual condition. Okay, here it explains it like the two supporting each other. Yeah, that you need both. And certainly, Sanskrit tradition talks a lot about mutual dependence. But it doesn't necessarily say, mutual dependence, the two things exist at the same time. Yeah. The way you would say mutual dependence in Sanskrit tradition is, in terms of causal dependence, the cause produces the result. Okay. But in terms of the cause, the seed being labeled a cause and the sprout being considered a result, those two are designated mutually dependent on each other. So that's what how the Sanskrit tradition talks about mutual conditions. Okay. While the sutras speak of 6 types of consciousness, emphasizing that each type of consciousness is responsible for cognizing its own corresponding object, consciousness also performs another role. It maintains the continuity of an individual's existence within any given life, from birth until death and then beyond. Oh, here's the Pali idea of continuum. Okay. It maintains the continuity of an individual's existence from birth to death and then beyond. Mm-hmm. It carries with it memories, karmic seeds, habits, and latencies, connecting different lives and making them a series such that future lives relate to previous ones. Okay, now we get it. Yeah? Different ways of describing things, huh? Okay, now let's go. So that's the third link, consciousness. But it is described in different ways, and it makes us think when we hear these different descriptions. Okay, now we're going to go on to name and form, or nama rupa, which is the fourth link. So name and form afflict transmigrating beings because they hold the object of clinging, the body. Okay? So actually the body is form, okay? Name refers to consciousness, yeah? Well, we're coming to that, yeah? Consciousness and certain mental factors, okay? So, but again, it's because there's the consciousness that the body becomes the body of a sentient being. Yeah? Without the consciousness, that body is not a sentient being. Yeah? And it doesn't experience pain or pleasure without the mind. So that's an interesting thing to think about. What is it that experiences pain? What is it that experiences pleasure? Yeah, we talk about physical pain. Yeah, like you have a headache. Yeah, right? So you have a headache. So my head hurts. But the head, without the presence of consciousness in the body, does not hurt. Yeah. I mean, a corpse doesn't have a headache. Okay, a corpse doesn't feel pain. So what is it that actually experiences pain? Yeah. We talk about it being the body that experiences the pain. But the consciousness has to be there. And I think it's actually the consciousness that experiences the pain. But we call it physical pain. And we say, my leg hurts, or my head hurts, or my stomach hurts. Okay? Yeah. What we're cognizing is a physical sensation, but the sensation doesn't exist by itself without a consciousness apprehending it. Yeah. So, unless there's a consciousness apprehending hunger, we don't feel there's not hunger, is there? Yeah. So how, this is something to really think about in your meditation. When you have physical pain, is it the body that hurts, or is that pain, how is that pain related to consciousness? It's something apprehended by consciousness. Yeah, but it's experienced by consciousness. I mean, pain is the second aggregate, the aggregate of feeling. Yeah, which is a mental aggregate. But it's a physical sensation. But it's the mind that's feeling it. Anyways, really something to think about, when we say, I have a headache, what is actually experiencing the headache, and where actually does the headache exist? Yeah, and when you stub your toe, that pain is in your toe, isn't it? Yeah, it feels like it's in your toe. As if you open up your toe, there's pain inside there. But of course, none of us, assume that if you open up your toe, you're going to see pain. So where exactly is the pain, and what is apprehending it? Okay, interesting thing to yeah, when your legs start hurting during retreat, yeah, investigate that. Okay. Name refers to the four mental aggregates. This is Sanskrit tradition. Feeling, discrimination, miscellaneous factors, and primary consciousnesses. So those four mental aggregates. Yeah. And form is the body. So there you have the five aggregates. Okay. One is physical, four are mental. The link of name and form exists during the time after the link of resultant consciousness and before the link of the six sources. So here, all those are consecutive. They're cause and effect. They don't exist at the same time. Okay. Third link consciousness is a condition for form because this body becomes a living being only when consciousness is present. But does your consciousness hurt? Yeah, my big toe hurts. Does the toe hurt? If there's no consciousness, the toe doesn't hurt. Does the mind hurt? We initially go, then does the toe hurting in the mind hurt in the mind? And the scientists say, no, you're firing. You have neutrons firing. Is neutrons firing pain? Yeah. Neutrons firing is just physical, biological material doing something. Yeah, that's not the sensation of pain. It goes along, or pleasure, When I say pain, it could be pleasure too. But it goes along with that sensation, but it is not that sensation. Yeah. So, are the neurons, what's hurting when your big toe hurts? When you eat a meal and you feel full and satisfied, what is that pleasurable experience? Yeah. Is it in the stomach? You open the stomach. You know, is it in the brain? Is it somewhere between the two? Yeah. Is it in the mind? Where is that? Okay. And what is it? Yeah. Is it something mental? Is it something physical? When the name or mental aspect of this life ceases, the person's rebirth ends and the body remains a lifeless corpse. While the cognitive faculties remain after death, I think here it means the cognitive organs. You know, we still have our eyes and ears and the subtle rods and cones that, you know, and what is it in your ears? The stirrups and hammer and stirrups, anvil and stirrup. You know, this is third grade biology, and I can't remember it, but you can't either. Yeah. Who's the biologist in the crowd? Who? You? No? Well, okay, something in the ear. Nobody remembers what it is. Anvil and stirrup? Okay.
And then there's the cochlea in the center where you then kind of have the physical motion coupling to the nerves.
Yeah. Yeah. So the physical motion hitting nerves, they're both material things. How come we hear things? Yeah. Is the cochlea hearing things? The hammer and anvil and stirrup? Anvil and stirrup. I thought hammers. No, it's like the stirrup is on the horse and the anvil is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but you know, it's just because of the shapes of these things. But you know, it's an interesting experience to explore, you know, for yourself. Okay. So while the cognitive faculties remain after this, they cannot connect an object and the preceding moment of consciousness to produce cognition because consciousness is no longer associated with the body. The mental and physical aggregates, our minds and bodies of this life, are the polluted, ripening result of karma. Okay, that doesn't mean the karma is the substantial cause of our body and mind. Substantial cause being the actual thing that transforms into the result. Yeah. It's karma is the principal cause. It's going to throw the consciousness in or propel the consciousness into the body. Yeah. But the karma does not become the body and it does not become the consciousness. Okay. As such, well, let's start. The physical and mental aggregates, our minds and bodies of this life, are polluted, ripening result of karma. As such, they are produced by afflictions and karma. They are the basis of the dukkha we experience in the present life. And because of attachment to them, afflictions arise, creating more karma that results in future lives, future rebirths. So this is the problem, okay? Because of previous karma, afflictions and karma, we got this body and mind, yeah, which themselves are neutral. But because we are attached to this body, we are attached to the mind, to our ideas and feelings and everything. because of that craving is a form of attachment. The craving, the clinging, the grasping, the attachment to these things, then we create more karma to take more rebirths. So it's quite interesting in your meditation, look at the attachment to your body and the attachment to your mind. Okay. So when we talk about attachment to our body, you can start with gross things like how you look. Because people are attached to how they look. We're attached to the shape of our body, whether you have hair or don't have hair, what color your hair is, whether it's curly or straight or coiled. We're attached to all this kind of stuff. We're attached to the shape of our body. This is a $1 billion, $1 trillion industry in the world. To feed just how the body looks on the outside. We're not even talking about the inside, but just how it looks on the outside. The attachment to that is an integral part of our economy. That makes this world go round. And if people were not attached to their looks, the economy would completely fall apart. It's true, isn't it? It's true. Okay. So that's just the outside. Then we're attached to the inside of the body, but there we're not attached to how it looks. The inside of our body, when we see it, we go, bleh. I don't want to see that. It is ugly and stinky and smelly and slimy, and get it away from me as quick as you possibly can. But on the outside, it has to look nice. Okay? Isn't this kind of relating to hypocrisy? Hypocrisy, you're one way on the inside and you appear another way on the outside. And that's exactly what the body is. It's like, if we didn't have skin, what would you say walking around seeing everybody's bodies without their skin? We'd all run away as fast as we could, but we're taking our own cesspool of a body with us. Okay, so the inside of the body, that's also another $1 trillion business in, making the economy go round. Health care. And how many times people putting so much of their life energy into developing machines to monitor various aspects of the inside of our body. And how attached we are, not to how the inside looks, but how the inside feels, whether there's pain or pleasure on the inside of the body. And we're attached, regarding the inside of the body, to what these test results are. What are test results? They're squiggles of ink on paper. But certain squiggles put you into, ultimate paranoia. C-A-N-C-E-R. No, C-A-N-C-E-R. 6 squiggles on your test result. It's like, ah! Interesting, isn't it? Huh? No symptoms. You're okay. But there's those squiggles. And we go totally bonkers. Yeah. Even though, what the inside of our body is not beautiful, and the CANCER doesn't make it any uglier or any more beautiful. It's just more biological material floating around in that sack. It's true, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, we've gone through where Shantideva talks about that. Huh? Okay. So in the case of human rebirth, fourth link name and form refer to the 5 aggregates from the time just after conception, because that moment of conception is the resultant consciousness of the third link. So just after the 5 aggregates from the time just after conception until the time the 5 sense organs begin to develop. So that's when this link exists. The third link consciousness doesn't exist very long. Okay, it very quickly goes into name and form. But name and form also, from the Sanskrit viewpoint, don't exist very long, because when you get the development of the 5 sense organs, not the mental consciousness, but the 5 sense organs, so that, the fetus is able to see, hear, smell, taste, and touch, then you're already getting into the 5th link of the 6 sources. Okay, now, how much can fetuses see? Yeah, their eyes are not open. But do they have any sight? Yeah, they have tactile consciousness. They have mental consciousness. They don't breathe. Can they smell? Can they taste things? They get their food through the umbilical cord. Can they hear things? They certainly sense the vibrations of the mother. Do they hear that? Or is it a tactile sensation of the vibrations? None of us know much. Yeah, but do they hear it, or do they just feel the vibration physically? Huh?
I don't know if they know that for sure.
Yeah.
I know that babies, respond.
Babies in the womb or out of the womb?
There's been a whole bunch of research done on babies in the womb with being, having music being played while the mother is close by, and that the babies will often.
Well, the mother's close by.
I mean, just delete that, okay? So they've done studies where they play soothing music and the baby calms down. They play, music that's more revved, and there's responses. So but are they hearing it, or is it vibration? I don't think we know enough yet.
Yeah. And when the mother eats chili peppers, the babies respond too. But are they tasting that, or is it a tactile sensation that they feel from it?
I read 2 little reports sometime in the last year or so on NPR about both of these things. That was a review of a book called Flavor or something, where they've studied and shown that babies or small baby children have.
But this is after they're
This is after they're born, but that they like the things that their mother ate while they were in utero.
Oh,
So they've made a connection that sort of familiarity of flavor goes forward.
well,
And
is it familiarity
Well,
of
maybe.
flavor or of texture?
Yeah, who
or
knows?
Of nutriments?
who knows?
Yeah. we
But the
don't
other
know.
thing that was really interesting that they're doing lots more studies on is they're studying to measure babies' cries in different languages, and that babies do cry in different tonal ways. Like they were comparing English and German. That there was a lilt in German. I can't remember whether that goes down or goes up, but they were tracking that the baby cries in a way that's different
after they're born.
After they're born. But again, does that come immediately? I mean, is that because they heard it when they were in utero? I don't know.
No.
But that's what they're trying to track.
Yeah. I would think it would.
But I mean, how much English did you hear before you started to cry? Not very much.
Yeah. Which cries are they talking about?
It says on month 8, week 29 through 32, the fetus can see and hear.
Who says?
Cleveland's maternal clinic.
Okay. I wonder if there's other people having other ideas. They say from the 8th week? 8th month. Okay. You're almost. Yeah. You can, see and hear.
Close the eyes, turn the head.
That means they can open their eyes?
Blink.
What? But there's goo all around. How can you open your eyes with all that goo in the womb? You know? Yeah, I mean, like, if your whole face is in jelly and you open your eyes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Do we really want to, be reborn? Yeah. Maybe. Okay. Okay. So form is the embryo that begins to grow in the womb. It consists of the 4 great elements, earth, water, fire, and air, and the forms derived from them, such as color, smell, and taste, and so forth. The 4 great elements are metaphorical designations for the different qualities of matter. Earth is the solid aspect, the property of resistance and hardness. Water is the fluid and cohesive aspect that enables things to stay together. Fire is the quality of heat and energy, and air represents mobility, contraction, and expansion. Beings in the formless realm lack a body and have only the seed of form. Okay, and that note says, this is from the sutra point of view. From the tantric perspective, beings in the formless realm still have a very subtle body, the subtlest wind that is one nature with the subtlest mind. Okay, so name refers to the 4 mental aggregates because they engage with objects with the help of names and terms. Just after conception, only the mental and tactile consciousnesses arise, because in the embryo, only the mental and tactile faculties are present. So they're saying, this is according to Chim Jampel Young's commentary on the Treasure of Knowledge. So they're saying that in the womb, of course, they also differentiate different stages of the growth of the child in the womb. So it's not saying at what particular level. It's just saying in general they only have mental and tactile consciousnesses. Yeah. In the embryo. But they divide, just like, you have the fertilized ovum and the embryo and the fetus and the zygote and all these different terms for different stages. Yeah, then in the Buddhist scientists have different names for different stages of the growth. Yeah, but the word embryo here is not specifically saying what it is, what stage.
So it sounds like name and form cease, the aggregates cease, and then the sense sources arise?
No. When they talk about name and form, they're talking about the body and mind at a specific time. Okay? And the time is after the first moment of consciousness, when the consciousness has entered the fertilized egg, until the development of the 5 sense consciousnesses. So that period in the womb is what is called name and form, according to the Sanskrit tradition. Yeah. Afterwards, when your sense organs or sense sources start to develop, then that becomes the 6th link. So they're just, when we talk about different stages of development, we are just mentally dividing things up. Yeah, it isn't like there's a stage of development out there in concrete. It's like there's all this stuff, and we're just saying, okay, let's call this part by one name and this part by another name, and so on.
Do the aggregates become the 6 sense sources?
No. No. Yeah. You still have the 5 aggregates. But when they're talking about the development in a new life, they call the 5 aggregates at one point name and form. And then the next point, they say the 6 sense sources, which don't include all the aggregates, but they're not saying that the aggregates disappear. They're just emphasizing that, now instead of just the rudimentary presence of the aggregates, now the child is able to perceive external objects. Okay? Makes some sense now? Yeah. That's what can be very confusing about studying these links, exactly what you pointed out, because if one link causes the other, then you kind of think, well, this must cease to produce that, but that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. No, it's just talking about pointing out different aspects of development, either the biological development or when we cognize objects, what happens, the stages of cognizing an object. Okay, other questions? Yeah.
You gave a few examples regarding attachment to the body, and you had mentioned attachment to the mind. I was wondering if you could give some examples of how we can look for attachment to our mind.
Oh, I'm so intelligent. Yeah. And I have so much mental sensitivity. Yeah. And I feel things very deeply, right? Yeah. Yeah. My emotions are so deep and so important. And I've got to express them, and everybody's got to understand them.
And you're intuitive.
Oh, yes, intuitive. Yeah, which aggregate does that go in? I have no idea either. I have no idea what the word intuition means. You don't find it in Buddhism. You don't find the word intuition, and you don't find the word justice. Sit on that one for a while. Okay, so, but yeah, I mean, we're attached to our mind, aren't we? Yeah. My mind's so sleepy. I wish it would wake up. Come on, wake up. Yeah. My mind is foggy. My mind is brilliant. Okay. Yeah, we're quite attached to our mind. Interesting, the expression, somebody's out of their mind. That can mean something good and that can mean something bad, can't it? He's angry, out of his mind. He's out of his mind with excitement and delight. Yeah. What does out of your mind mean? We all know what it means, but what does it mean? You know, somebody's out of their mind. He's out of their mind. You know, they're out of their minds. Yeah. They think January 6th didn't happen, that it was any old day. They're out of their minds. They think there was an insurrection on January 6th. What in the world are they talking about? It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. My ideas, my opinions, I'm very attached to those, right? My ideas are always right. My opinions are always the best ones. Yeah. My identity, yes. Based on my body and my mind. Or my personality, whatever personality means. Yeah, what does personality mean? What's a personality? Yeah, these are the kind of questions, you know, that for me, Buddhism makes me ask, you know. Because we always talk, oh, somebody has this kind of personality. They have this kind of temperament. What's a temperament? What's a personality? You had a question?
When can you talk about human life? This is a controversy, a big controversy, and I'm curious because many friends talk about this, no? According to Buddhism, when you can talk about that there is a human life.
I think Buddhists would agree there is human life. I mean, we're human life, aren't we?
The first moment with the feels, or you need to have a conscious,
there has to be
consciousness.
There has to be the sperm, the egg, and the consciousness that are conjoined. Yeah. When exactly they conjoin, it's not really sure. Okay. It's usually, they say, well, the first moment, that is conception, when the sperm, egg, and consciousness join. But science says conception is just when the sperm and egg join. Yeah, so scientific definition of conception and Buddhist definition of conception are different. Yeah, and you know, when exactly does it join? Before the fertilized egg attaches to the womb, or after, you know, and in vitro fertilization, what do they call it, fertilization, yeah. Then when in the world does the consciousness end? And if they freeze the eggs, is there a consciousness in the frozen egg? And does that consciousness feel cold? Yeah. Does it have tactile sensation, you know? At that point, does it feel cold? Is it angry because it's frozen? Or does it like being frozen? Yeah, these are questions for people with psychic powers. Yeah, you know, not the scientists can't answer them even. Yeah, but yeah, there's human life. Now, you know, when exactly in that whole developmental process it starts, it's very difficult to say. Buddhists tend to think it starts early on. Yeah. Yeah. So then abortion becomes quite a difficult question. Okay. So when people ask me, I say I am pro-life and pro-choice. Yeah. I'm pro-choice and pro-life. I go, what? Are you schizophrenic? No.
Last week we talked about the mere eye carrying the karmic seeds, right, from life to life. How does that relate to terms like, you know, we also talk about a specific eye or a general eye to explain the process of rebirth?
Yeah. Well, each rebirth has a specific eye. The general eye is the one that includes all of the rebirths. Okay. but the specific I is in each rebirth.
And then does the general I carry the karmic seeds?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's similar to the mirror eye when the mirror eye is used in that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mirror eye and general eye mean the same thing. Yeah.
I have one question myself, and there's a few online. My question kind of flows on from the one just asked. Going back to what you covered last week, on page 169, it says, although the mere eye carries the karmic seeds over a long period of time, the mental consciousness carries them temporarily.
Mm-hmm.
If the mere eye is a person, it's not a consciousness, and that's carrying the karmic seeds over a long period, then why does the mental consciousness have to get involved in carrying the seeds?
What's the basis of designation of the I?
The body and mind.
Yeah. What's the subtle basis of designation when there's no body?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. And then a few online. Someone asks, what is someone who is unable to feel pain? So someone who is unable to feel pain.
Yeah.
Is that due to a medical condition? Is that due to the neurons, or is it due to the consciousness?
You got me. Yeah. What do scientists say? They would say something has to do with the neurons. Yeah. Yeah. Buddhists would say that, has to do with the person's karma. Yeah. And I mean, Buddhists do talk about the body and mind relate to each other. Yeah. So if they don't relate to each other properly, then, yeah, like some people who don't feel pain.
In Buddhism, when we request inspiration from the Buddhas, how is that inspiration transmitted? Is it consciousness, or is requesting inspiration simply like saying, please continue to teach me?
I think there's little sparkles, that kind of fall down from the sky and go inside you and you feel all tingly. I would say, when we talk about blessings or whatever, that they would be it actually means transforming into magnificence. I would say that they're neither form nor consciousness. They would be an abstract composite. Yeah. But those sprinkles are really pretty. No, I'm joking. Okay. Yeah.
Someone's asking for you to please explain again the point on the point about the physical body experiences the pain, but when the pain feeling actually comes from the mind and not the body.
Well, this is a question, okay, for people to investigate in your meditation. What is the pain and where is it and what experience is it? Because we say my stomach hurts, but, does the stomach hurt? There has to be consciousness there. Yeah. And even, even from the scientific viewpoint, does your stomach hurt or something, certain aspect of your brain, something's firing? So which is called pain or pleasure? Is it the neutrons that are firing, that's the pain, or that's the pleasure? Because from science, everything is physical. Or is, because common language, the pain or pleasure is in the part of the body, that where something, I can't say that feels it because this is our discussion. Where is the feeling? Yeah. So, when your stomach hurts or your stomach feels good, yeah, stomach's here, brain's up there. Where's the feeling? And what is the feeling? Yeah. Yeah, when you're hungry, your brain doesn't feel hungry. But your stomach can't feel hungry without the brain. And neither the brain nor the stomach can feel hungry without a mind. So, I am not a Buddha. I cannot answer these questions. Okay, last question. Yeah?
What exists of the karmic seed between the causal consciousness and the resultant consciousness?
What do you
because
mean?
Because the consciousness, carries the karmic seed, or the mere I carries the karmic seed.
Yeah.
But between the causal consciousness
and the result, the cause, it's a mental continuum, or the mere I that carries it. It's the continuity. Yeah, it isn't you have a call to consciousness here. Okay, there's a mental consciousness there. Then there's however long your lifespan is, minus 2 moments where there's nothing. And then there's actually the whole rest of your life, there's nothing. And then the first moment of your next consciousness pops up again. No, there's a continuity. They're just designating for the sake of explaining this. They're pointing out this moment and this moment. It doesn't mean the karma vanishes in between or the consciousness vanishes in between. Okay? Yeah, so this whole thing of the 12 links, very often they're pointing out specific moments to emphasize those. Okay? And sometimes too, like when we get into craving, they'll talk about craving and how it ripens the karma, and then they'll talk about different kind of craving that has nothing to do with ripening karma, and you're going, why is this explained under craving? You're talking about it here, and then you give that explanation of the same thing, and they don't mix together. There's no problem. In this context, it means this. In that context, it means that. Okay?
Is it correct to say that that karmic seed that's deposited on the causal consciousness doesn't exist between those two points?
No, of course not. Of course the karmic seed exists. What, you think the karmic seed is here and then it goes out of existence and then it pops up again?
But how could it, I guess that's the question, how does it endure through that time period?
How does your consciousness endure? How do you endure?
But those are different moments.
How does a river? Yes. What one moment causes the next moment. How does a river flow? Yeah. How does anything exist? One moment causes the next moment, causes the next moment. Yeah. I mean, how does the thermos exist? Just, moment one of the thermos go entirely out of existence, and then moment 2 is a totally new thermos, and there's no continuity between them. And where do you draw the line between moment 1 and moment 2? Yeah, when you're looking, we all say, the seed produces a sprout. Yeah, can you tell me what moment the seed stops being a seed and produces a sprout? Yeah? What moment are you going to say, that right down that middle? Here it's a seed, here it's a sprout. This is what I thought about when I went to Israel. I was on a kibbutz that was on the border between Israel and Jordan. Okay? It was right on the border. There was a no man's land in between, but I'm not sure who the no man's land, which country possessed the no man's land. But you look at it, okay, where exactly is the difference between Israel and Jordan? Where? And if a grain of sand blows from Israel into Jordan, then what? here it's Israel, then it goes there and it's Jordan. Oh my God. Does it cease when the wind is blowing it across into Jordan? Is there a moment where it ceases being Israel and it becomes Jordan? Or does the grain of sand cease as it's flying from Israel to Jordan? Yeah? Did you cease between yesterday and today? But yesterday was gone and over, and today is today, and it's happening. Yeah, the two aren't the same. Yeah, where did you exist between yesterday and today?
It's very different to talk about physical things versus mental things.
Yeah, okay. Right. But you as a person, okay, you're an abstract phenomena. Sorry to break that news to you. Okay, you're an abstract phenomena. Where did you exist between yesterday and today? Yeah? What about, when actually is the difference between yesterday and today? Is it exactly at midnight, or is it the split second after midnight that becomes the next day? When is the end of today? Is it 11:59, the square root of 2, because it never ends? Yeah. And, when is it going to become tomorrow? Okay. Do you remember the math puzzle? Okay. I loved math puzzles. Somebody's shooting an arrow. Yeah. So the arrow goes halfway. Then it goes another halfway. Then another halfway. And another halfway. And another half. And there's infinite halfways. So it should never hit the target. But somehow it hits the target. But that's totally illogical. It can't hit the target. It keeps on going just halfway. Yeah, we can abolish all murder sentences. Nobody can be convicted of murder because, the bullet or whatever it is never hits the person. So they never get murdered. It's always half. Okay? Okay, I think we better stop.